Okay, good morning, everyone. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm pretty loud person, so try to tone it down so that I'm not yelling at you. I'm told that that I am loud enough that it sounds like I'm yelling. So what I'm going to do is kind of tell you some tips. Obviously, payroll and withholding deals with people with employees. A lot of you probably don't have employees, but these tips apply to anybody in the state of Oregon, whether you have a business, don't have a business, to kind of help you out. So the mission of what I do is to help better educate the business community of Oregon. And that's basically, it's tax preparers, petitioners, attorneys, bookkeepers like David, road agents, and those doing payroll. So again, anybody in Oregon, business owner, no matter what, helping educate. And again, this could be somebody who doesn't have employees yet, but wants to start a business and get them on the right page of, oh, you want to go to the Secretary of State's office. What is an EIN number? What are the different structures of a business? What's a partnership? What's an LLC? Trying to help them out. So how do we do that? Attending events, expos, events like this, face-to-face, getting out, getting to the public, hosting. I had a payroll training class that I hosted last week that we had 520 people on Zoom. Just getting out there to help educate so that people's questions can be answered. So the first tip, there's a series of 3 slides of tips. The first one is if you're going to hire somebody, either as an employee or as a contractor, you want to make sure you get the paperwork filled out. For some reason this year, I've gotten a lot of calls, about 6 or 7, where a business has an employee, they start working, they're like, we'll fill out the paperwork later that day, and the relationship falls apart for some reason. And then the employee, ex-employee, refuses to give their social security number. And then the employer is now freaking out because, again, how do I pay them? You don't want that situation, so making sure that as soon as, again, before they start, before any training videos, I-9, W-9 is all filled out. Even for businesses that hire or contract out, there's requirements of getting information. Make sure that you do have that. Keeping your accounts up to date. Okay, so this is probably, the top one is probably the most important. Make sure you always have, with any financial institution, government, banking, whatever it might be, that it has your most up-to-date address. So this is where maybe keeping a list of where you have ties to, and that way if you do move, you have a business location, you update those locations. And depending on how long that tie needs to stay along after you move or whatever you've changed, you keep that address up to date for X amount of time, whatever that be. For government, it should be about 6 years after you've severed that. If you moved out of the state, keep that address good for about 6 years. We have a lot of people that we get bounce back mail, return mail. We have a lot. The issue is what we do at the state, our actions continue no matter if we have a good address or not. So unfortunately, if somebody says, I did not get that letter, unfortunately that does not stop or give somebody ability to say, oh, I didn't know, so you can't do X, Y. Unfortunately not. So that's why making sure that the address is on file. And again, this is not just for State Department of Revenue. This is for any institution that you have. So think about that when you move. Make sure, let's say you go from West Salem, Salem Electric, make sure they have your new address, just in case.
Chris, do you have a email access or a web page access that an employer can do that?
So for the Department of Revenue, depending on the level of access, we have a customer portal revenue line, they can change their address on revenue line depending on the type of access they have. Also, for business accounts or accounts that maybe is a partnership, S-corp, make sure you have the most up-to-date owner officer information. A lot of people think that if they update with the Secretary of State's office, that's good. If they have an LLC, maybe they add a member, maybe it's a business that is going from generation to generation, but we need that on our side. That we don't get that information, we don't pull it from Secretary of State's office. That is something where we have to get it from the businesses and from the new owners. And so we have a specific form that we use to capture that information. Also, if you're going to have somebody who's going to call on your behalf, like for example, if you've hired David to call and get information, even though David's not your employee of your business, he cannot call and get everything he wants unless he is authorized through a form. And if he just calls and there's no form, there's going to be very limited information unless he has a letter that he can obtain. And if it's something that he needs now, that can be very frustrating. And so again, making sure that you have the correct forms for anybody who needs to call to be authorized to get information on your account ahead of time will help eliminate that last minute, I need this. Well, you're not authorized.
Is that form available online to fill out and submit?
So if you, on revenue line, depending on your level of account, you can submit it, yes, on revenue line. There is also the paper copies that you can send to us, and those forms are basically done pretty quickly. We're only a few days out. Our central support, furthest back on work they are is about 4 days. So even on paper, we're pretty caught up. And then respond to any communication. Department of Revenue, Employment Department, Department of Consumer Businesses. Again, this could apply to any letter you get from any financial institution, anything. Reply, contact, ask questions. It's interesting that sometimes I will get an email saying, hey, has this been resolved? Like for example, in August, the letter, pull it up, the letter's dated in March. Don't wait 5 months to find out if something has been resolved, because if there's a balance, could be going to a lien depending on the balance, could go to garnishment, could go to other things. It's best to get things taken care of right away. And I advise people, if they don't know what it is about, call us, or they can also reach out to myself. And then the third page of tips, know your return due dates. Very important that you know that for the big taxes would be personal income tax, which majority of people file. You can have an extension, but there is some misconception that extension does not allow you to pay late anything that you may be missing. So October 15th is a deadline to file, not pay. April 15th is still the deadline to make sure everything is paid. So if you pay by October 15th, just know there's going to be penalty and some interest for that. And there has been misconceptions around that. So how you do that as business owners, making sure that you are paying estimated taxes, keeping good books. Again, having somebody like a bookkeeper that can kind of help you, P&Ls to kind of give in that ahead of time, making sure that things are paid ahead of time. And then know when payments are due. The estimated taxes, the reason why those are required for people, business owners majority, is to apply so that at the end of the year, by April 15th, you could, if let's say you owed $4,000, you could pay it all by April 15th, but there still would be something called a U&D, underpayment of estimated taxes. The federal government has it, the state government has it. And the reason why that is put in place is to encourage people to pay estimated taxes, because I would assume, just like for your business, you can't wait and tell your creditors, I'll pay you once a year. Just like for our creditors, we can't wait once a year and hold off until we get a large sum of money from people holding their funds. That's why estimated taxes, that's why the UND penalty is there at the federal level and the state level. Okay, how do you know what taxes apply? In Oregon, the Secretary of State's office does a great job compiling information from many different agencies, state, federal, and compiling it into one packet for people to consume. And there's two packets. This Oregon Start a Business Guide is a really great package. It may not tell you everything at a local state or a local principality, like every tax that a city or county might have, but it tells you to reach out. Also, it tells you things like basic structures, how to get an EIN number. It also tells you that as a business owner, you may have to file what's called a personal property tax return with the county. A lot of business owners don't realize that they have to file, majority of times, a personal property tax return with the county. And then if you're going to have employees, the Oregon Employer Guide. This is a very comprehensive guide about anything related to payroll in Oregon, and again, comes together, answers questions, gives phone numbers, talks about exclusions, talks about what if I hire somebody who is a son or daughter under the age of 18, are they subject to unemployment insurance? It really gives a lot of good details of those things. So, and then again, phone numbers to call if you have questions. And then the IRS has their website. When it comes to like IRS, our site, if you have a question, using a search engine is probably the best, because that will help get you to the specific page. I've never started at the beginning of IRS and tried to find my way down, because they probably have tons and tons of pages, tons and tons of different avenues. So searching, asking is the best way that I found to get to that specific page. And the majority of times that has never failed me to find exactly what I'm looking for on the IRS. Okay, so 3 things I want to communicate in closing. We got about a couple more slides. Know when you're filing and payment requirements for your business or even personally are. If you're hiring out a tax professional, educate yourself and verify that your obligations have been met, rather than assuming somebody else is taking care of it for you. That's why having like a revenue online account is important. Avoid filing or paying late, because most of the time there will be penalties and interest. So one of the worst things you can do is file late. Filing will add up, and it will get worse and worse as years go by, the further you get. So if you don't have the funds, the best to do is file and set up a payment plan, because at least you'll just have that 5% penalty versus 25. If you wait and we file for you, it's a 50% penalty. If you wait 3 years and you file 3 years in a row, that's 100%. So it adds up. And then ask questions if you don't know. We're here to help. We have several different, in essence, call centers that are specialized in different things depending on your needs and what it is, what taxes it is. We administer about 40 different taxes. Most people don't realize there's a lot of different specialty taxes in Oregon. And so we have a lot of people that are there to help answer questions. Okay. Hiring an independent contractor. So normally, if you hire somebody, default is they're employed. But if you're going to want somebody as an independent contractor, it's important to understand the rules around an independent contractor. What is an independent contractor? And how does the state and the federal government look at those people to make sure that they are classified correctly? And it's really to make sure that they have protections, because as an independent contractor, they wouldn't have workers' comp and they wouldn't have unemployment insurance. So making sure that you are truly hiring an independent contractor and not just hiring an employee that you're saying is an independent contractor. We have a website of oregon.gov/IC, has a lot of good information, specific fields like beauty and etc. So again, if you're thinking about doing this, just know, look at this. There's information on the Oregon Employer Guide. So just be careful, because again, at the end of the day, it will come back to the business. Okay, want to learn more? If you can, any point in your journey, you want to know more about independent contracting and basic payroll, I do have a quarterly training class I do. The next one's December 9th from 1 to 3. I have my information. You can reach out. Again, I know that there were some comments, government's here to help. We laugh about that, but there's a lot of people that are actually here to help, that come to work, want to serve because they love what they do and they find passion for what they do and they want to help. And so, can we find outliers? Sure we can. But again, having the right people in the right place to help serve you guys and help answer and passionately, respectfully, is what everybody deserves. So again, in closing, if you have any questions, feel free to take them. If not, again, my contact, somebody in the government that is here to help. Thank you.
Thank you.